Okay, so we're live, so look for the video that's live. If you're already there, refresh your screen. All right, so the two things we're doing right now is you're launching UE4 Editor, and you're going to YouTube, and you're pulling up the live stream on .word Games. In the meantime, I'm going to play a video. It's kind of cool. Look at this, we're famous. That's my class. All right. I'm going to conduct the rest of the lesson sitting down at my computer with the microphone. So I'm going to be very descriptive on what areas I want you to follow along with, you know, where buttons are, upper left, lower right, that kind of thing. And yeah, and refer to the live stream that's now up if you need to. Okay, so you all should be staring at something that says new project. And on this window with this says new project, you have all these different options. These options are templates, right? Because we don't like to start from scratch in game development. We like to do get right away to the good stuff. So we're going to choose one of these templates. In this case, let's choose the third-person template. And this lesson is that classic game where we take a third-person template, we turn it into a first-person game that's the kind of the starting point of a horror game, like a Slender Man. This is my lesson for introducing you to the concepts of Unreal Engine, so that by the time that our class ends, you feel comfortable using it. And you know where everything is and that kind of thing. All right. So Without further ado, you've chosen third person. Go ahead and name it horror game because it's in the horror genre, or Slender Man, or whatever. Just can't have any spaces. And then make sure where it says starter content that it says with starter content or starter content included, something like that. Starter content is pre-made textures and shapes and 3D objects and that sort of thing that'll help us decorate our level. Once you have all that together, third person, hit create project. Now mine's going to load real fast. Yours is going to take a minute. So while it's creating the project, I'll explain kind of like what it is we're doing here, right? We're using what's called a game development engine. Okay, that is how games are made. Virtually all games are made in game engines. Game engines are programs for making video games, right? It's the same idea behind like using Google Docs to write a paper for your class, or using Microsoft Word to write a paper for your class. Why do you do that? Why don't you just write it by hand? Well, the word processor program is a program designed specifically for making papers, and it lets you do all these great things really quickly with all these advantages. You can use different fonts, you can save different versions, you can change the color, you can put images, you can copy and paste, you can delete it, you can make multiple copies, you can share it with people. I mean, tons of advantages, right? Game engines, same idea. So we're using a game engine that's actually free, right? We're using Unreal Engine. How is it free? Well, it's free with an asterisk, and the asterisk is if you sell a game in Unreal Engine and it makes money, you then have to pay 5% royalty on the profit that it makes after it's made $3,000. So if you make a game that's successful enough to make $3,000, then a 5% royalty kicks in. Other than that, there is no like trial version of the software. You're using the same version that everybody else is using. So Fortnite, which was made in Unreal Engine, that's the version you're using. The most recent famous game made in Unreal Engine is the Kingdom Hearts game that came out like a month ago. The new Kingdom Hearts, made in this. So for those of you learning this, Viewport and all the different stuff, materials, that you're looking at the same thing that they were designing their levels in and making their code in and everything, which is pretty cool. So that's UE4 editor. That's what we're gonna do today. Is there anybody whose project is still kind of hanging? You want me to kind of wait a couple more seconds? Yeah, I saw a hand. Okay, we'll give it like 30 more seconds. So just to preface what I'm going to be covering is we're going to cover this area in front called the viewport. The viewport, you'll hear me refer to it as the viewport, that's what it's called. This is where all the world design, all the level design, all of that happens. It's right in the viewport. And then we're going to cover what all these other panels do. And you'll hear me refer to this kind of whole section as the front of Unreal. It's sort of just the front. It's where you'll be most of the time when you're doing things to your world, to your level, to your game. Okay, I think that's enough time. So I want you, first of all, to click once into this viewport, into this center box. And once you clicked once into it, then it'll be highlighted. And with your mouse, I want you to hold down the right mouse button. So hold it down. And then move your mouse. What that's going to do is it's going to allow you to look around. So you hold down the right mouse button, move your mouse across the trackpad, and you can now move your view around. And while you do that with your left hand, put your left hand on the keyboard over by the WASD keys. Okay, the WASD keys they're like arrow buttons. Okay, which is for your left hand. So W is going to be the up arrow. So if you press that, it's going to make you go forward as long as you're holding down right mouse. S is backwards, A is left, D is right. Okay, WASD. So now, as you move your mouse, holding down right mouse button, you can look towards various places that you're flying to. And pretty much, this is how you're going to get places. Zoom in on the stairs or something. Like pick a goal and try and get over to it. Also, for those of you who've been doing this a little while, you can also hold Q or E to go up and down vertically. All right. So that's looking around. Now I want you to get in a position where we can see our stairs. So look at these stairs. I'm going to expand my viewport to full screen for those of you who are looking at the projector. Make it a little easier. So fly over so you can see your stairs, and then click on your stairs. When you click on an object, you're going to see these arrows appear. There's 3 of them. They represent all the directions in 3-dimensional space in our 3D world. Up and down is one direction, and the 2 different side-to-sides. So when you get those arrows, that's how you're going to move an object. So hover over one of those arrows with your mouse, and it'll turn yellow, so it's highlighted. And then left-click and drag. And then it'll move that object in that direction. So I can move these stairs side to side. If I do the blue arrow, that'll left-click and drag. I can move them up and down. That's how we move things. As a level designer, this is, you'll be doing this all the time. But there's 2 other tools that you'll also be using to make your worlds unique and all that sort of thing, which can be found in the upper right. So there's a toolbar in the upper right of the viewport. So within the viewport, upper right, there's this toolbar, and I'm going to explain what each of these little buttons do from left to right. Right now, you can see the leftmost button is selected. That's the move tool that we're using. I want you to click the second button in that toolbar in the upper right. And now your stairs doesn't have arrows anymore. It now has these rotation tools. And if I left click and drag these, this will rotate the object around. So go ahead and rotate that. All right, and then the third tool of the level designer is this third button. So click on the third button in that toolbar on the upper right of the viewport. And this is the scale tool. This allows us to rescale objects, make them smaller or larger, that's what that means, or reshape them a little bit. So I can scale the stairs in the side-to-side direction, have really long, sideways long stairs. Good for like a courthouse sort of thing, or a pyramid, right? Or I could make it scale vertically really tall. In fact, if I do this, it doesn't even look like stairs anymore. It looks like looks like the building that King Kong fights the helicopters on at the end or something. Even though they were stairs before. So I'll hit Command Z, by the way, to undo that. Or I can just shrink it back down. Now, what if I want to scale something, but universally? That is, I don't want to change its shape. Well, if you put your mouse in the center of all 3 of those scale directions, all 3 highlight yellow, and then you can just make the thing bigger or smaller without changing its actual shape in any way. Right? That's scaling it uniformly is the idea. Okay. All right, continuing on our toolbar. The very next thing is you hover over, it says cycles, the transform gizmo coordinate systems between world and local object space. If you want to impress anybody, not a girl, but your parents, say that sentence and they'll be like, geez, you're learning a lot. It has the opposite effect on women, I've noticed. Okay, so you have that. I almost never click this. I barely use it. It basically is kind of jargon that's math jargon. So you can leave that alone. The very next thing I'll click rarely, which if you click on it, it has this option to check mark surface snapping. Surface snapping means that everything kind of has a gravity applied to it as you level design. So it's good when you're at the end of designing a level, like you're decorating. Imagine you have some medieval scene, you have a table, you're putting bowls and silverware and cups and mugs and goblets on it. It'd be useful to have this check mark. That way, everything you put and drag out and copy doesn't float in space. It'll sense what's beneath it and snap to that surface. But I leave it off most of the time. Okay, moving over, you have this number 10 here. If you click on that, you have all these different numbers. This is the grid snapping system. So right now it's at 10. If I change it to 100, for example, you'll see when I try to move these stairs, it kind of jumps. It's jumping by 100 units. It's really evident if I change it from 100 to 500. Now it jumps a lot. Okay. So this is called working with a grid system. And it's really useful to work with a grid system for some really interesting reasons. So one would be this. I'm going to duplicate this wall here vertically. And if I get up close to it, you get this horrible looking thing. This, what you would probably call a glitch, but what's technically known as Z-fighting, because these two walls are in the same location on this axis, and so the computer's just flipping which one to show you. So that's no good. However, if these walls are supposed to be connected in some way, you don't want there to be some sort of seam or something, right? Like let's say you try to connect them and then there's just a little bit of a seam. That's no good either. So what's nice though is when you work with a grid system and you don't go off of that grid system, like let's say you say everything is 100 units away. When I make a copy of it, I can snap these things perfectly together so that they actually look like they flow into each other. And what's useful about this is, and this is true just about any video game you play, most of those buildings that you walk into, they are not one 3D object. They are dozens, maybe hundreds of 3D objects snapped together in the game editor. The reason I like to do that is it's called modular design. It's like Lego pieces. You could build a lot more worlds a lot more quickly using a modular approach, a Lego piece approach, where let's say the artists use, let's say you have doors in your game. Let's say it's a Fallout game. You've got, vault doors and concrete doors and wooden doors and submarine metallic doors and future doors that open up. If the level designer says, okay, every door is going to be exactly 100 units wide and 200 units tall, then that means that when you're level designing, you could swap out a concrete door in the middle of a concrete concrete kind of building with a vault door or some future sci-fi door or a submarine door, and it will fit perfectly. And maybe that's a good place for that door because that's when there's some secret vault buried beneath this building or something. So all the walls, all the roofs, all the assets being designed modularly can snap together, and they'd flow continuously where you never know that the walls that make up the room we're in right now are several pieces because they just look like they flow into each other. So that's the idea behind the grid system. Okay, moving on. Over on the right here, you have a snapping system for rotation. Okay, same idea. I like to change this to about 15 because 15 will go into a lot of other commonly used angles like 45 and 90 degree angles. So again, it's something it's up to your preference. Finally, there is the scaling snapping. I never change this. I just don't see the need for it. And then you have the camera speed. So the very last thing is camera speed. If you up that speed, right now it's at 4, now it's at 6, I can fly around my room, my world much faster. Okay, much faster. So I'll leave that on 4 right now. You can make it slower again if you're like decorating something. You got to get up close and you're moving too quickly. That's what you do. All right, so that's the viewport. We'll come back to that in a minute. But before that, I want you to take a look at the left, something called the modes panel. So this panel on the left is the modes panel, and this is where we bring in anything kind of new into Unreal. So I want you to bring in something called a point light. How do you bring it in? Left click and drag. Left click, drag that point light into your world. You can drag a couple of them just to get the feel for it. And these are lights to light up your world. Now, select one of these lights, or while one of them is selected, why don't you look at the panel in the lower right of Unreal. In the lower right is a panel called Details Panel. This you use all the time. Details Panel holds all of the details or characteristics, attributes, whatever, of the thing you have selected. Okay. So for example, right now I have this point light selected. There are things that can change about that point light. Right now in the details panel, you should see something called intensity. If I turn the intensity up, my light gets brighter. If I turn it down, it gets dimmer. So go ahead and change that intensity of one of your point lights. So I'm making really bright point lights. Now, without me even telling you how to do it, can you change the light color? Can you change the color of that point light? I'll let you figure out how to do that. All right, now that's all fine and good. Let's take a look at the bottom panel called the content browser. The bottom panel is the content browser, and this is where all the files and folders that make up our game are located, because a video game is just a computer program disguised as something else, right? But at the end of the day, it's a computer program. All computer programs have these files and folders and stuff. And what we'll do is I want you to take a look at, there's a little button right underneath the green Add New button, and it's right next to Filters. It's to the left of filters. Just click on that button, and it'll open up all our folders so we can see them. I want you to click on the folder called Starter Content, and then double-click on Materials folder. And that's going to bring up all these strange little ball things with these different textures on it. These are materials. This is what forms the magic of great graphics, of all graphics. In other game engines, these are called shaders. In Unreal, they're called materials. Same thing. Once you have these materials, I want you to start dragging them onto objects in your world. You can think of materials as the thing that forms the skin of the object. It's what kind of wraps around that geometry. And it's really what makes the thing look the way it looks. You know, like right here, I have these gold stairs because I'm using a gold material. But if I want some mossy stairs, maybe I use this moss material, whatever. Experimenting with these different materials is some really cool stuff. I'm a big fan of the hex, m_tech_hex tiles toward the bottom. Just a really good looking futuristic sci-fi material that looks great just about anything. The one next to that, hex tile pulse, actually changes colors over time, which is pretty cool because materials, they're not static, they can change. Best example of that is, you should drag this out, the water ocean material. Again, toward the bottom, I drag that on this cube. You'll see it actually has waves. So you're starting to already kind of decorate a world and get a feel for it. Let's run around this world and test it out. So in the top, sort of toward the middle top, there's a play button. I want you to hit play and run around your world. All right, now I want you to hit escape, which will take us out of that play mode. Now we're back in editing mode. And let's take a look at making our third-person character a first-person character. And how do we do that? Well, it's actually easier than you would think. First off, we need to find our character. So find your third-person character. This guy right here. And we're going to open up his blueprint. What that means is blueprint is just a coded object. He is a coded object. He has code on him, right? He's our character. We'll want to open it up. So with him selected in the details panel is a big blue button called Edit Blueprint. So choose Edit Blueprint and then Open Blueprint Editor. Once you've got that, drag the top of that tab next to the other tab so we have a big window to work with so we can see the whole thing. We'll need to see the whole thing. So make sure you got a big window. Okay. Now the first thing you'll be looking at is all of this blueprint graph stuff. This is our coding. We're not going to do any coding right now. In a few minutes, yes. At the moment, let's come back to this. You'll see that toward the top, we're actually in the Event Graph tab. Click on Construction Script tab. This is another area for coding. There's nothing on here currently. And then click on the final tab, which is called Viewport. And this is what the thing looks like, right? The physical manifestation of the blueprint, in this case, our character. He's got the mesh and the animation and, of course, the camera. So if we want to make this a first-person game, I want you to click on the camera, right? And we're just going to move the camera into where the player's head is. Okay? Now, you know how to do this because we've done the arrow keys, right? We've dragged the arrows, so you can do that. Make sure your grid is something low, like mine's at 100. I got to change it down to like 5. That way it's not snapping so much. And we'll just put the camera right where the guy's head is. And sometimes this will take a couple tries. But once you're happy with that, you can hit play, and voila, you are in a first-person game. That easy. Escape, okay. Okay, once you hit escape, so we're back in the editing mode, you have that. Now, let's go back to the front of Unreal, right? We're gonna come back to this blueprint, but I wanna go to the front of Unreal. There's one thing that we didn't do. This is a true horror game. We wanna turn off the lights. It's too happy, it's too daytimey, it's not scary enough. So there's a couple ways we could do this, but the simplest way is why don't we just delete everything in the world that's making our scene bright, okay? We'll leave the point lights alone because they're kind of small, whatever. But the sun, the sky, the fog that's responsible for scattering that light, that all needs to go away. So we'll do that through the final panel in the front of Unreal, which is in the upper right, called the World Outliner. World Outliner, what's that? It's really simple. All it is a list of everything in the scene, everything in the level is listed in the World Outliner. It's useful to have this because, well, we're about to delete things, so it's good to find those things in here and just delete them. It's also useful to have a list of everything in your scene in case you have a really large world and trying to find something. For example, let's say I'm far away over here and I want to find my third-person character. I don't know where he's at. I look in the World Outliner. I see, okay, there's third-person character. I could also search for it in the top third-person character, whatever. Once I have found that in the World Outliner, if I just double-click on the name, third-person character, it'll take me right to him. It works like that with everything. Anything you double-click on, it'll take you right to that thing, including the big sky itself. All right, so I want you to type in the search bar of World Outliner, sky, we're gonna delete the sky. Click Sky Sphere Blueprint, hit delete. Then delete Skylight. Then I want you to type in light, and I want you to delete the thing called light source, that's our sun. And then the last thing is fog. Type in FOG for fog and delete the atmospheric fog. And it will be now a fully nighttime scene. I'll repeat that again. You deleted the sky sphere, you deleted the skylight, deleted the light source, and finally you deleted the fog. Okay. And if I hit play here, you can see I'm in a nighttime kind of world. All right, hitting escape. Now, by the way, how much time we have left to class? Can somebody give me a time check? 12:10 is when, and when do we get out? 12:13? Ah, okay, we're not gonna get to the coding today. But what I do want you to do is click on your third-person character real quick. Let's hit Add Component in the panel on the left, and then we want to add a spotlight. And this is what we would normally simulate as being like a flashlight. And what I wanted to do is code it so that when the player presses like the L key or presses their mouse down or presses F key or whatever, the light turns on and off every time they do that. But we won't be able to code that today. But you can add that spotlight to your character, and at least now you can run around and your character is carrying a little light. And when he goes up to things, it lights the way. So a good basis of a horror game. All right, we got like 3 minutes left. I'm going to conclude the live stream there. Let's see. All right. But thank you, and we'll cover more in-depth stuff tomorrow, including questions. So come to class tomorrow, or Thursday for you guys, right? Come to class Thursday with prepared questions that we can answer because we'll have a long time together, a long time, and we don't want to waste it. So come with something to ask me, and we'll figure it out. We'll go over a whole bunch of stuff in Unreal on Thursday. Thank you very much.